Huh. That's weird. All right, guys, a couple weeks ago we had a Q&A and a couple things that came up that we want to address. One is, where's the F350? And I made a commitment to myself that I'm going to finish all of my old projects before we dive too deep into the new ones. And that includes our 93 LS1 SWAT Mercedes. Now, if you're new to the channel, this was my first gas LS swap. There's a couple leaks that we need to take care of, and we're gonna clean those up and then go over the whole project, because I want you guys to not run into the issues that I ran into. One of the other things that came up was, what would I do different? Well, we'll cover that in our LS swap. We basically fixed all the things that I would do different. But one of the biggest things I would do different is take better care of my body. I've got arthritis in my right ankle. I can feel my back. And another thing is my hands. I've washed my hands 3 times now. You've just watched it. And probably a dozen times throughout the day. And they're still dirty. Why are we not wearing gloves? Might be, besides not feeling comfortable in gloves, I was always proud of these hands. I was proud that this symbolized that I was a hard worker and that these hands did something throughout the day that I could feel good about. If I had really nice clean hands, I could be a stockbroker or a super rich accountant or an unemployed guy living in mom's basement, and it's impossible to see the difference from your hands. This, I thought, was always attractive, saying, wow, that guy knows how to use his hands. But let's all be honest, guys, the girls don't want you touching them with this. Just being honest. And that comes from bad advice when I was first starting out, and that was my boss, who was a tractor mechanic, old school, saying, you know what, oil is good for your hands. I never have any cuts, or I have cuts, but I never have any infections because the oil cleans it. It's not a bad thing. And when you're young and impressionable, that's what you learn. That's what you take in. Now, starting to talk with other friends like Scott, who says his hands are starting to tingle a little bit, and it's not a good feeling, and I'm starting to get that feeling now. So the reason I haven't been wearing gloves, or I don't wear gloves, is the nitro gloves. I can't wear them for longer than 5 minutes. I have the shop very cool in the winter and work more efficiently that way. In the summer, my hands get so wrinkly in about 5 minutes that I can't stand it anymore. The gloves rip, and it's extremely frustrating, to the point that I just don't try and wear them anymore. I wear them when I paint or when I'm washing in the Varsol bin, because that's only short little times. And in between each session of painting, I have to change my gloves. So getting back to how I'm gonna change that is, Ansell Gloves actually reached out to us and noticed that we do a variety of different things, from bodywork to working with engine oil, working with welding, and just about everything in between, tire repairs. And they said, Rich, we see that you're doing a lot of work and you're not wearing gloves, and we kind of want to help you with that. So I'm going to try and wear the gloves as much as possible. I don't want this tingling. I want to keep working for long times, long periods of time. And if I'm already starting to feel back pain, I'm not even 40 yet, I've got arthritis in my ankle, and I'm still putting in long days, but it's longer when it hurts. We're gonna try and nip it in the butt and try to take care of it. So I said to Ansell, fine, but I hate gloves. What do you got for me? And this is what they sent. So different gloves for different applications. We've got tire gloves, welding sleeves. They've got nice impact gloves that are breathable on the back with some rubber on the inside, meant for high impact. And when that wrench slips, it's going to prevent all those little marks on my hand. So they've got even different styles of those. You can see like a medium cover. This one's even more flexible than this one, I think. This one's even thicker for even more abuse. And then we've got our mechanics gloves. So these actually breathe much better. These are like a cloth glove, and then are dipped in some oil resistant material. Both of these, I've been working with these. You've seen me wear them already. These, I do have to say, I can wear for much longer periods of time because they do breathe. So we've got ones with Velcro, ones without Velcro that slide on and off nice and easy. Now I've had lots of advice when I was younger growing up, and I'm trying to listen to them, and for some certain things I did. When I got out of the trucks, I stopped jumping out of the trucks. When you jump from 5 feet up onto the ground all the time, your knees take a beating. Sorry if you're laughing and you're like, I don't want to watch this stuff. I'm just telling you now from experience, this is what people told me and it's helped. But I've had some bad advice with hands and gloves and oil and the chemicals that we're using. Things were different 20 years ago. There's lots of pails that were not marked with chemicals. I went in and grabbed parts and my hands fell asleep because of some sort of dangerous chemical that was cleaning parts. And they laughed at me, right? In the shop, oh, idiot, and you did that, don't worry, a day or two later and it'll be fine. Well, take care of yourselves, guys. We don't live long enough to make all of the mistakes ourselves. We have to learn from the mistakes that other people make. So take my advice, take care of your bodies. I'm gonna try and do the same with the gloves, do that one next step. Now I'm not perfect. I'm still having trouble grabbing them all the time, but I'm going to try and use them as much as I possibly can. The nice thing about these gloves is that they are reusable. These are washable, use them over and over again. Switch gloves for the different tasks throughout the day to make sure that you got the right gloves for the right application. And so we got an oil leak on the Mercedes, just to prove that if I can do it, you can do it. Nice small little 10mm bolts, see if we can grab those with the fingers, and then get this car back on the road again. Here we go. This is an oil pan, aluminum oil pan that we grabbed. And this seam leaked. First off, the fittings at the back leaked. They were pressed in for the oil because it's a front sump. And then this seam split, started leaking. So we had Vince weld that and it's still leaking. And this fitting over here spun for the turbo returns. And we also have a transmission leak, and that's on the tailstock. This is a worm drive gear that we welded into the tailstock that drove the speedometer, and it worked for about an hour, and then something let go inside here, and now this is leaking, so we'll just put a new tailstock on it from Tuesday there. But we'll start with the oil pan. Probably have to drop the sway bar down, which isn't a big deal, but I can't bring it forward enough. My bracket for my alternator goes in front of the oil pan, so I have to take this whole bracket off too. More than likely I got to pull my intercooler and my condenser, but I see that this is all covered up in plastic. I'm gonna get rid of this because there's louvers here in the bumper that allow air to go through, and hit that. It was running fine when we're driving it, but when you're sitting in hot traffic, I could see the temperature start to climb. So we're gonna get rid of this and just put 2 electric fans on the front and then allow more air to hit it. But these were just fans when the AC kicked on. For the Mercedes, the actual fan was engine driven. Now we're just relying on these 2 fans. So it's just simple, right? It's gonna be so simple.
Just an oil change.
Just an oil pan. It's not a big deal. Straight in the scrap. Vince is much happier now that we went to Princess Auto and restocked on all of our welding supplies. Now the only thing he can complain about is crappy metal, but I got him brand new stuff for today. Living the dream, boys, living the dream. Okay, Vince has his bungs welded in real nice. We cleaned the pan. Oh, just look at those welds. Perfect. So now we're gonna put the top plate back in again. But before we do that, you gotta make sure that the pickup tube lines up with it. We use the old pickup tube. It's tricky because I have to put the oil pan underneath, then bolt up the pickup tube, and then put the pan to the block. Put this in. This pan is much nicer because it's got baffles all 4 corners, which is the one we have in the Audi. So there's always a reserve if he ever takes us to the track, which he shouldn't because his brakes are not anywhere near good enough for a track. One hot lap will do it. But so what's really nice about the gloves, honestly, is that they don't rip. These are still the original gloves on the whole job. And I find the nitro ones, as soon as you have one sharp corner, even on a nut, it rips and kind of pointless. I find the rubber gloves are for jobs that you don't actually need to wear rubber gloves for. Brand new gasket to go with it. There we go. Put the pickup tube in there and put her back on. Here we go. A new O-ring on the pickup tube, which is a problem on these engines. That looks much better. Look at that. Turbo drain, perfect. Nice. Oh, you know what? I forgot that nut on the pickup tube. Stupid, stupid. I bet you guys saw that. Sucks when you go back to your bench and you have one nut left over. You're like, oh, that's in the middle of the engine. Okay, so this was actually my first LS swap. Being a diesel guy, this was my first gas job, and I was into the internet hype that LS swap, everything super easy, on a budget, make 500 horsepower, 1,000 horsepower, no problem. A lot of the parts that are on here now were not available to us way back when we started the project 4 years ago. So we've fixed a lot of my naive mistakes already. And I just want to go over that and share my experience so you guys don't go into the same thing. This is a 93 W124 Mercedes Wagon, not a true AMG, even though it's got an AMG body kit. Super clean body, imported from Japan and originally made in Germany. It blew a head gasket and it lost reverse, so the owner said, you know what, let's do an LS swap. Simple, right? No problem. Some of the mistakes that I've made along the way was good ideas at the time, but not able to execute to the full extent of what I hoped it would be. Perfect example is one of the leaks on the tailstock. Transmission started pouring oil out of my sensor that drives the speedometer. I'll drop the drive shaft, so we'll take the tailstock off. Hopefully it stops leaking on me on the floor. We started out trying to use the original gauges. We moved the oil pressure sensor and the temperature over from the Mercedes engine. I decided back then to use a stock wiring harness and computer, flash that, HP tuners, and that did not work. We had a couple bad pins, we had a bad butt connector, and trying to diagnose those issues cost hours and hours of time. In the meantime, we replaced the wiring harness with a Holley standalone, and that came out, I think, 2 years after we did this swap. So we made this tailstock housing that has the drive gear welded in from the Mercedes tailstock to run the mechanical speedometer, which worked for like an hour, 100 kilometers. And then this gear that drives this on the tailstock came off of the press sleeve. So it was a plastic gear put on a steel sleeve. Unfortunately, it didn't work. Look, at least I got it on camera that it was working. But then this started leaking. So went to Gary's Transmission on Vaughan Road in St. Anne's. Got a brand new tailstock, new seal, new bushing, new gasket, and never been used. Gary's a great guy. If you guys have transmission issues, definitely give him a call. Very smart, and always willing to give you the time of day. So we're gonna throw this one back in again, move the speed sensor over, which is now feeding the Holley dash so we can actually see the speedometer, and we're good to go. So me just saying this, the time it took to weld this in, the time to book the welder to have this in. The welder didn't take out the plastic gear when he welded it in, he melted it. Driving to Mercedes, grabbing a new worm gear and drive gear for the speedometer, having it welded in, having it work for an hour, and then just taking it off anyway because it leaks. There's 20 hours gone, just like that. And that's daytime hours. If you're doing it at night or weekends, it's gonna take you even longer than that. As far as I know, this is the only W124 wagon with an LS in it. We met one guy at LS Fest when this one was there, and he had one the year before, but it burnt to the ground because of fuel and electrical issues. So that being said, there's no parts for this. So engine mounts, exhaust, transmission mount, trying to adapt the Mercedes power steering, which also runs the hydraulic shocks, the air conditioning, all of that is homemade to the point that this pump here is the Mercedes. So this is the AC, this is the hydraulic pump, and then an idler, and then this is the LS front drive. Now, the way I had to make it work is I actually took this pulley and brought it to the machinist, and he added 2 more ribs because this is actually a 4 rib and I think this is a 6 rib belt. The 6 rib belt worked with the Mercedes stuff, so I had to pay to get that balancer, the extra grooves cut in there. The other belt runs the alternator, which is off to the other side. So we went with the turbo, and I regret that because it's very tight on there. We got a lot of heat issues, so we got to try and keep this cool. I brought the radiator to my radiator shop, and he said that rad is plenty big to keep that LS cool. All right, perfect. Flush it, clean it, make sure it's good. We're gonna throw it back in again. It's just you have to take his advice, and if it doesn't work, it's kind of on you. Nobody's gonna back up their stuff. We had to relocate the coils because the exhaust and the turbo gets in the way. So you have to alter the wiring harness that way. Now they're not on top of the engine, they're underneath. Is it close to the exhaust? Is the exhaust gonna burn your coils? So I had to make covers, insulated covers to protect it from the exhaust. All stuff you don't think about. This cooling system, you can see Lyle's bent this up real nice for me, which is, comes out here, just enough room to go around the alternator, curls around an intake pipe or something. There's a bend here, I don't know exactly why, but it's there. And then the other coolant line goes out into the side. All of that, just that little bit. Oh, that's really nice, Rich. There's 10, 15 hours again. So all these things you really need to keep in mind when you're trying to figure out your LS swap or your LS project. The drive shaft. Are you mating your LS to a transmission? Are you doing an adapter there? Or are you keeping that GM and then doing your drive shaft to your transmission? Are you modifying that? Or are you modifying your drive shaft to your rear end? So I decided to make an adapter that works on the Mercedes rear end and the GM drive shaft. And it works great. I'm just trying to balance it now. So basically just take a hose clamp and move it to different spots until the vibration goes away, and then you can add or take away weights. That just there, trying to balance it, there's 2-3 hours by the time you bring it in, jack it up, or move the hose clamp, take it for a drive again, do all your different things. So you got to keep that in mind. So for the dash, originally we were trying to get the original Mercedes dash to look stock, but running into all those issues, the most reasonable thing is to still have a dash that just plugs into whatever wiring harness you have and displays it electronically. Again, another 20-30 hours wasted. Okay, so under the hood, because there is no kit to make this work, every piece is made by itself. There's a lot of engineers and a lot of computer programs to see your tolerances, how close are you to something else, how hot does that get, is that gonna melt that, is that gonna do this? It got hot enough under here that the glue melted under the insulation, so we got to figure something like that out. Okay, we'll add heat shields and wrap it up. Now we do a lot of crazy swaps, and that is part of the fun of being able to do it with YouTube, and YouTube cutting the bill. If it doesn't work, that's okay. You can still make a video on that and get paid for that and try again and fix it and build on it. That's what we're doing with the Audi. This being a customer's car, if we didn't have YouTube, this car probably would have killed me. I've got so many countless hours into this thing that I never build out, that I never charge my full wage on, it is impossible for me to do, because every piece is homemade, and then after you make it, you have to tweak it to fix it. There's no computer telling you that this bracket is the right distance away so your belt's not gonna walk off. There's this much expansion on the exhaust pipe and that exhaust isn't gonna leak after you do it. All things like that. So all things to keep in mind for you. Definitely LS swaps, Coyote swaps, Hemi swaps are fun, they're worth it, they make cars unique. But if there's a kit to buy it, to make things fit, really consider forking out the cash up front, because this has cost me a lot more afterwards than if there was a kit where I could bolt on pre-made mounts and whatever. Diesel swaps, say the diesel swap in a Tahoe, completely different thing. We're taking a diesel engine that was in a truck and basically just moving it to another truck, essentially. Whether it be the Silverado, the Tahoe, or an F350. The weight is already there for the suspension, things like that. They're much, much simpler. When you start getting into this, I've lost a lot of sleep over this car, but we're gonna keep going until we get it right. Now, another big issue is, which you've already seen, is that the parts that you are buying are failing, like the oil pan. Not my fault that the seam split, just a crappy weld, because it was a cheaper part. At the time, that was within budget, so we took it. It took me 3 days to take the oil pan off and fix that. So just keep that in mind. Not only is it your work, you also have manufacturers that, oh, you know what, it was never designed to go in a Mercedes, so we're not warrantying that. Sorry about your luck. There it is. Mentally, this thing almost broke me too. I almost have to walk away sometimes because I get so frustrated knowing that there's one thing back there that's wrong and I need to take 20 things apart to get to it. And when I fix that one thing, something else isn't lining up right. We're getting there, and I am proud of this build. I'm excited to get it going, but I'm almost embarrassed about it at the same time. And I shouldn't be, because there is no other one like this in the world. The reason why there's no other one like this in this world, because there's a lot more smarter people than me that just say no. It's got a ways to go yet. Still need alignment, brakes, tires, suspension raised up, because the suspension tires are actually hitting the shocks. And that's what happens when young kids had it before you did. The wiring's a bit of a mess. The stereo, it had a big stereo in it. They cobbled a bunch of the factory wiring in there already. So it made sense to do the swap because the stock stuff was already kind of messed with. But we're gonna keep carrying on. Let me finish this up. Here we go. Other than this bar, that's about it. I think, hopefully the last time that I see this for a while, but it's easier when, looks easier when somebody else does it. Okay, so as for the gloves, I'm happy that they lasted the entire job. That's probably the best thing about them. Whereas the throwaway nitro gloves, I would have went through 20 pairs on this job. Every sharp little piece rips them and then they're just hanging off and they don't do anything. These are still protecting from the oil and actually protecting for a bit more. You can see I scuffed my hands here a couple times, and whereas those would have been cuts on my fingers or scraped skin, the glove takes the abuse. So these are the active armor gloves. If you guys want to try these out, they work great for this job. We'll put the link down below. We'll be using other gloves in different videos just for different applications, but these were a good fit for this oil repair. So yeah, a couple more weeks of wearing these and maybe my wife will let me hold her hand again. that's it for this one. Unfortunately, it's all snow and salt and rain and crap outside. As you can see, all that snow sitting around a giant flamethrower out there. But we will be taking it for more drives, and we'll do another update once the brakes, tires, and alignment and all that's done. And also keep in mind that in 1993, Mercedes did the 450 horse conversion into this car called the Hammer Wagon, I think. And that was a $130,000 conversion back then. So we're still well 6 figures underneath that, but yeah, you see how much work it actually goes into doing something like this. So keeping that in mind, don't let me discourage you. Get out there, work on your stuff, get filthy, because if you're not filthy, you're not rich. Here we go. Hey, Kitty? Yeah, even Kitty approves of the gloves. Look at that. Look at the purring. Yeah, does it feel too weird? There you go. Kitty's getting big. You coming up? No, I don't want to go to work. No, I just want to pet and sit on your lap all day. Give me attention. Give me attention, huh?